Gupta.
Testing.
Let's give all of our students another round of applause. Next, we'll move to item 5.1, public may address the board. Do we have any signed up? Next, we'll move to item 6.1, district data presentation. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. McCraw.
Good evening, Chairman Graves, Vice Chair Cunningham, esteemed board members, and Dr. Hairston. Tonight, I have the privilege to be here in my favorite capacity and share our mid-year data update. And if you didn't get a chance to preview this, we are going to be here together for a few minutes. So stick with me. We'll do questions at the end unless you have a pressing question as we go. But we're going to look at an analysis of the assessment data that we've done so far this year and a pretty deep dive into trend data. So the way this is structured is this presentation was also shared at the division level with all of division leadership about a week ago. So if you have access to this presentation, there's an agenda, a seating chart, all the things. I wanted you to see the full process that the division goes through when we look at data. So there's a note catcher, and I'm clicking. I have a clicker and not a mouse, so I can't open every link. But if you look in this presentation, there is a note catcher and several things. And what we do as a division is the full team gets together, and we have data conversations. We dive deeply into the trends that we're seeing and that are presented, and we talk about now what. What actions are we going to take? What things do we need to put into place? Are there trainings we need to do? And I'm going to walk you through that process today. So they get a note catcher, they get a copy of this slide. We're sitting in teams, not necessarily like curriculum and instruction and student support, but the whole division is divided up. I use a random person generator and put them in teams. And so they're not necessarily working with their own team. So it's a really, really productive day. We give them access to several data tools that they have all the time. DPS in 3D is our Danville's data dashboard that we're forever updating and pouring into so that we have just ready immediately data for our leaders and for our schools. We also go through the school quality profiles, which are updated by the state. And then we also talk about tools that the state releases for us, like the VDOE Build-A-Table. So if you click that link, you can actually access any released data and build your own tables and charts, which is really neat. Additionally, if there's any updates in any of our platforms that we use, like Progress Learning, which is what we use for interim assessments and then just general common assessments throughout the year, I share any reporting updates that I think might benefit the teams as they do their work in the schools. So this time that was the comparative report in Progress Learning. And then we talk about breaking down data by subgroup using one of our other platforms called Performance Matters. All that being said, I also provide a lot of data to the division for us to discuss. So when we did this in the fall, we looked at demographics as a breakdown of subgroups because we do have a lot of intentional focus on subgroups in this division since that is federally monitored. So this is the fall data. And on the next slide, we have the winter data. So we do provide regular updates throughout the year looking at our enrollment. Our enrollment has a lot of implications, specifically federal funding. But what's really neat about this is we're able to track changes throughout the year. And if you interact with the link at the top of this slide, you can actually click on a school and it shows you the breakdown by school of all of the categories that you see in this picture, which is a really great feature for a quick look when we compare our academic data to decide if there's specific groups that we may or may not need to target. So we always start with a review of the most recent SOL data. And what we have here is a full trend analysis and a review of SOL data since we've been back in person full-time since COVID. So we're going to look at 22 through 2025. The questions I would like you guys to ponder, that we ponder as a division when we do this work, is what does this data tell us about our students? What does it tell us about instruction? What are our immediate areas of improvement? And what are long-term areas of growth? And these kind of will stick with us as we look through this data together today. So first thing, we're looking at SOL pass rates from 2022 to 2025 for all students. And if you'll notice at the bottom, we have English, then history, math, and then science, and we're looking at 4 years worth of data. What I hope you'll notice is that in the green is last year's total SOL data. And what I hope you'll notice is that those are all positive trends upward that we're seeing in this division since 2022. Further, we take this data and we compare it with our assessment data across the year and do really deep trend analyses. And so what you're seeing on the next few slides are the emerging trends that we've seen over the past 3 years across the grade level, across student groups, by content. So this first slide is about reading. And so you'll see our strengths on the left and our weaknesses on the right. And what's really cool about this, because this is my 5th year in the division, over on the left, some of those strengths like summarizing text, when I first came here, that was one of our identified weaknesses and one of our lowest areas across the board. And now we're seeing that becoming one of our strengths, which means we put intentional focus towards something we identified, and we're seeing that pay off. And then you can see additional things like vocabulary. Stick with that. We're going to talk about vocabulary a little bit tonight. Main idea of figurative language and things of that nature as strengths. And then weaknesses, things like Greek and Latin roots. Specifically, that is a weakness with some of our identified subgroups like students with disabilities and English language learners. Structure of text, we see vertically aligned across the board as a weakness. Use of word reference materials, comparing and contrasting, conflicting viewpoints, and general academic language. For math, we also have 3-year trends of strengths and weaknesses. Over on the left, number sense and operations. Again, when I first came here, we identified that specific reporting category in math as a weakness, and now we're seeing it as one of our emerging strengths, which speaks to a lot of our work in number sense and fluency. Probability and statistics, specifically for the upper grades. Algebraic thinking, proportional reasoning, and expressions and operations. Weaknesses from pre-K, we have a pre-K math assessment called EMAS, all the way up through high school. We actually see measurement and geometry as a common reporting category, so that's a place we're starting to focus on and see what supports we can put in that area. So stick with that, you'll see it again later. Estimation, modeling and representation, fact fluency, and geometry construction activities. As for science, you'll remember that science is only assessed in 3 years, grade 5, grade 8, and biology. And so those strengths are broken down by those grade levels because those are the assessments that we have. For grade 5, our strengths include energy concepts, weather, conservation, and then light and photosynthesis. In grade 8, life science, chemistry, and weather. Weather is a common topic. Biology, cell processes, and natural and human events. As for weaknesses, plant and animal processes, the kind of trend we see overall is things that you can't see. You have to think conceptually, are more challenging for some of our students in science. Physical science topics like friction and force and motion, earth science like resources, and then biology, scientific skills, and molecular processes. And last, but certainly not least, 3-year trends for history. You're going to see these broken down by the subject area that was tested, because history, like science, is not tested every year. So strengths in world geo include identifying characteristics of continents and climates, and then weaknesses, foundational content like map skills, which we actually see across all levels. Maps are a struggle. And world geo is typically in this division taken in middle school. Civics, also a middle school history course. Strengths, citizenship and voter requirements, and then weaknesses, applying concepts in real-world contexts. Strengths for World 1, which is a high school history course, recognizing characteristics of early civilizations. It's pretty hard to relate to, right? And then weaknesses, foundational content like map skills. I think you'll see a trend there. And then Strengths for Virginia Studies, which is the 11th grade course, locating and describing Virginia Studies is the 4th grade course, guys. I'm thinking about VAUS, which is the 11th grade course. Locating and describing Virginia's regions, which is promising because that's a map skill. And then weaknesses of foundational content like the rest of the map skills, okay? So we're working on that. So then we take this data and we break it down by subgroup. So that same chart you saw a few slides ago, that was all students. On this slide, we're looking at performance for Black students specifically. So we still have reading on the left, then history, math, and science over these 4 years. And I think, again, you'll see that positive upward trend. We are moving our students. Black students are the majority of our student population. So this upward trend reflects about 72% of our students. Here we have EL students. You will see slight dips in reading and history, 2 comprehension-heavy tests. I will say in reading specifically last year, that was a brand new test, tested on new standards. So just consider that when you're looking at this. A pretty large increase in math, and then a very large increase in science performance. And then here we have students with disabilities, and you'll notice again that upward trend. So from here, and I might need help from our friends in the booth for this, but we take that SOL data, we have some conversations about what we need to do as a division, where we need to focus instruction, what professional development we need to do, and then we take it and apply it to things like accountability. So I've talked with you guys a few times now about the SPSF, or the School Performance and Support Framework, which is our former, what we would have called accreditation. Now we call it accountability. And so just real quick, a note on accreditation. What we do now is we have to answer, we submit a ton of data to the state, and we also have to answer the questions listed here. And if you'll click on number 3, instructional program, we have to answer questions for every school on how they adhere to the questions listed here. And so, for example, under instructional program, I think there's like 35 questions. And again, we answer those for every school and say that they're in compliance or not. And we were able to say that every one of our schools was compliant in every area listed in this survey, over 100 items for every single Danville school. That, along with all of the state reporting that we do, which is intense, the state took all of that data, put it together, and they agreed that we are, in fact, fully accredited and in compliance with all state standards and expectations. So that's where accreditation now comes from as a part of that bifurcated system. So if you'll go back to my presentation, please. On the next slide, which I have control of, the new accountability system. What we do now, in terms of like our school scores or grades, if you will, is this accountability system. And so what you're looking at with this chart is an overview of our framework scores. And so we had some off-track schools we've discussed recently, some on-track schools and a distinguished school. And of course, everybody's goal is to be distinguished. And so what we did, if you'll click the school profiles and then click activate for me, it should be the very first one. What we did is we built profiles for the schools based on last year's data. We ran new calculations for them based on the changes to the school performance and support framework that are happening this year. And so we gave them predictions, essentially, like we were able to do under the accreditation model. And if you see everything that's highlighted in yellow is something the school can go in and manipulate and work on some of their goal areas themselves. So this is a document they can use live to say, hey, if we get 50 students to pass advanced in reading, this is how it would impact our overall score for accountability. And so we did this for every school. We had one-on-one meetings. We went through this data. If some of the principals are still here, they can attest to that. And what we did, we talked through the whole platform, how those things are calculated. And then if you'll go back to the slide, please, we were able to write some goals together. And so if you'll click on the goal setting link, thank you. The very first one is, again, for Activate. But what we did as a team is we sat down and we decided, based on your previous data, What are we going to do to focus at the time for the next 75 days to prepare for SOL testing to make sure, not that we haven't already been goal setting, but to make absolutely sure now that we've gone through this data that we are putting everything possible in place to best support our students. And so in this document, we wrote goals for every school. We talked about progress monitoring. We talked about who was responsible for what. And this also gives us something to go in and check on and help our schools support. So we were really proud of this work that we were able to do to support the new accountability model. Our folks have been asking for predictions like we used to do, so this is as close as we have for right now, and we'll keep working on those processes. And so just to show you a comparison of what was in those profiles, on the left, we have the 24-25 data year information. Those are the scores we've already received from the state. On the right, those are our predicted scores if nothing else changes besides the changes to the calculations that will happen for elementary science, middle school science, and then all of the end of course tests, which are high school tests. That also includes Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 for middle school. And so you can see the comparison there. One of the things I'll note, if nothing else changes at Park Avenue and Schofield and GW, for example, they would drop a level because of the new calculations. That's one of the reasons we wanted to sit down and write very specific goals and make sure everybody understood how the framework worked and how the points come about, so that we can ensure that we were back on track for our goals to make distinguished, okay? So, that was a lot, but we're not even close to done. So, we're going to start with the reading data to do a breakdown of the assessments that we've done so far this year. So we're going to talk through essentially all of the things that have happened in the first semester and then up until about last week. And so we're going to start with iReady. One of the really cool things about the iReady test is that it's actually an alternate test that we get approval to do from the state. We used to have to give the Virginia Growth Assessment, which was kind of like an SOL test, but we got the same data from that we get from the SOL. We wanted an opportunity to use an assessment that we get a ton of information from, and iReady was our solution to that because it also has an individualized learning component, which our schools really appreciate, and you'll see some of the data here. But what we wanted to start with is showing the correlation of iReady to SOL. So in 2024, about 28% of students were on grade level. 96% of those students passed the SOL, which you would expect if they were on grade level. The students who didn't pass were in the 375 and up range, which means they were very, very close to passing, okay? 30% of students in 2025 were on grade level, and this is students in grades 3 through 8. 97% of those students passed the SOL. The 6 students, if I remember correctly, who did not pass, all scored a 399, every one of them, and a passing score is 400. So this type of data, when we look at this year over year, lets us know that the tools we're using are very useful, very valid, and are good indicators of success for the SOL test. Now, students who are one grade level below were also about 70+% of the time likely to pass the SOL, because iReady measures cognitive ability for skill, whereas the SOL is checking, have we done what we need to do this year in regard to standards achievement? The third bullet point talks about students 2+ grade levels below. In 2024, 19% of those students passed their SOL. 48% of students last year, 2025, were 2+ grade levels below. 21% of those students passed the SOL. So again, in regard to ability for the skills assessed on iReady, they were scoring a little bit below grade level, but were still able to pass the SOL based on the work put in by those students. So, when we look at fall to winter, because iReady is assessed 3 times every year, we do a beginning of the year diagnostic, and then a mid-year diagnostic, and they'll take another one, the third and final, towards the end of March. But what we're looking at here, this is a longitudinal analysis, meaning we're looking at the same students who took the test in the fall compared to the students who took the test in the winter. So if you had a fall score and a winter score, you are listed here. This is a really good graph in that we see that more students are measured as mid or above grade level, more students are early on grade level, less students are scoring as one grade level below, and less students are scoring in all of the grade level below categories. That means our students are moving in the direction we want them to move. So again, this is this fall to this winter. This is the breakdown by grade level. So before we were looking at all students, now we're looking at K through 5. This is also a longitudinal analysis, meaning the same students who took the test in the fall and compared to the students who also had a score in the winter. And kindergarten doesn't go but so many grade levels below. However, we are quite proud of their performance and the scores that our kindergartners receive on these assessments. This is 6 through 8. Also a longitudinal analysis, we're still looking at fall to winter. And this is a growth comparison of schools across the division. Now that dashed line is the national median percent of typical growth at about the same time as our second diagnostic was taken. What I want you to know is that I've never shown you this graph before, not for any reason, I just haven't. This is the first time, but what I want you to know is if I had shown you this before, most of our schools would be in the bottom left quadrant, like very low in that bottom corner. Now, almost all of our schools are above the 50% growth line, which is really, really good. All of them are in the high growth area, and then Activate is up there in the high performance and high growth. And again, this is for reading specifically. What I do want to point out is for Schoolfield 6th grade and Bonner, those are a lower population of their students because 6th grade at Schoolfield is only 41 students, so that's not quite a fair comparison. And then Bonner did have less students take it the second diagnostic than the first diagnostic, and that was because of weather. Another important piece of iReady that we as a division have to focus on is, are we using the individualized learning well? The recommended amount of time in iReady is 30 to 45 minutes a week, or 49 minutes listed here. You'll see that our kindergarten through 4th grade are getting in that recommended range. And then our 5th through 8th grade are just below that recommended range in reading. Now, when we get to math, this will look a little different. I'd like to think that reading is just a little bit lower in 5 through 8 because it's a lot higher in math. Now, what we're looking at here, we've moved from winter to winter. So this is a cross-sectional analysis, meaning we're looking at a group of students who tested last year compared to a group of students who tested this year. They are not necessarily the same students. So when we look at winter to winter, we do have less students, 3+ grade levels below, and more students 1 grade level below, which means we've moved a lot of students from well off grade level to closer to on grade level, and that's very, very good work. That's what we want to happen. This is the grade level breakdown from winter to winter. Again, a cross-sectional analysis, so last year's students compared to this year's students. And then from middle school, the same thing, the cross-sectional analysis of 6 through 8. We also look at relative placements and growth by race. What is new here that we haven't quite talked about yet is iReady has a measure called typical growth. And typical growth is the expectation of students to move a grade level each year. So when we say a student has met typical growth, they've moved a whole grade level within a year from whatever their baseline was. This is the breakdown for English learners. And then students who are identified as having a special need. And then this is the comparison of typical and stretch growth. So when I say typical growth is, are they on grade level or not? Stretch growth is, are we accelerating them or are we providing enough intervention for them to move at a faster rate? So think of students who are below grade level. If in reality, the goal is to move students 1 grade level every year, if students are already below, we want to move them more than 1 grade level a year to get them on grade level. So stretch growth helps us do that. And so when we compare typical growth to stretch growth, we're able to have those conversations about, are we moving students quickly enough? We also look at comparisons among subgroups. So this is how did growth vary from English learners and special education students. And then we also look at English learners who are both English learners and special education students. And then we look at interim assessments. So we do these diagnostics to determine grade level. Then we do interims to make sure that students have mastered the content as it's taught over the year. However, we did change our interim assessments this year. We were asked to help increase student stamina. So our interims are now full SOL-like assessments 3 times a year. So we've already done interim 1 and interim 2, and you see the results here for all contents. You'll see this 3 more times. And then the third interim, which is actually in 3 weeks, I think, if I know what today is, maybe 4 weeks, that one we call an SOL simulation, because by that time we've taught all of the content for the year, we're gearing up for the SOL, now it's time to do a simulation. And so with that model of an assessment cycle, the actual SOL test is really like a retest compared to that SOL simulation that we do. I also want to point out, if you're looking at these numbers, by interim 2, about 50% of the content for the whole year had been taught, and they took a test that had the full year's content on it. So if you're looking at these scores and like, Olivia, I don't like this, you should, because they're scoring this high on only being taught 50% of the content. And we now pull our data at a cut score of 60%. So this number here, like Activate, 75% of students scored a 60% or higher on their interim 2, where they'd only been taught 50% of the content. That's what this number is. It's not an average, it is a true, this is how many students actually passed the test. So then, we look at the overall, and then we break this down into subgroup data. We break down the subgroup data in a number of ways. We look at averages, so we can talk about like who's really high performing and who's really low performing. Then we also look at that cut score of 60, which is what you're looking at in the chart on the screen. Then we also break down the subgroup data for each content by grade and by school, and that is also right here, but we won't go into that at this moment. But I promise, a lot of different ways, and we have a lot of conversations about it. Then we take the content of the interims and we put them into what we call SDBQ reports, and that's student detail by question. If you don't mind, if you'll click on the one that says Reading SDBQ under interim 2. So we do this for every grade and for every school, and for the non-public version, we also include teacher names, so we can specifically target where who's really excelling on certain standards, and then who might need additional support. We show the schools these with the school name. So if, for example, Ms. Richardson behind me wanted to say, I wonder what Activate is doing for the average of meanings category, which we've covered in Q1 and 2, then she would call Ms. Scott over at Activate and say, hey, how are you guys teaching word meanings? I think we might need some additional support here. So we do this for the whole test. We break it down by how it was paced, what was taught, what hasn't been taught, so we can go back and focus on things that maybe needed a little more support. So not only do we share this with schools in data chats that we do with each assessment window, but we also share this with the curriculum team so we at the division can have conversations on how we need to support all of our different groups as we work towards our common goals. So again, we do this for interim 1 and interim 2 for all contents. We do a division level summary and a school-based summary, and we give a teacher-specific report. We also do the summary reports, which break this all down by grade and school. So then, we also take all of our data for each window. So for example, Diagnostic 1 and Interim 1, Diagnostic 2 and Interim 2, and we run pretty comprehensive, rather intense, once you get multi-year data into this, trend analyses so we can identify vertical patterns. And so what you're seeing on this slide is a comparison of interims and iReady, and trying to decide what skill areas we need to specifically target and what's our conclusion, like why is this happening? So for example, we mentioned vocabulary as a strength earlier. But part of vocabulary, academic vocabulary, is something we've identified as something we really need to focus on. And so we say that why we're seeing this and it's staying flat is we need to focus on this at a tier 1 instruction level. And so we take each of those things as we do our trend analyses and decide how are we going to attack this problem. And so if you'll click, Mr. Cheney, I think, on the trend summary at the top, we do this in a complete comprehensive manner by grade level. So you'll see we do growth trends, declines, and what does this say about instruction at each level. So this is the first time we did this. I think the teams, as they worked through this, found this very useful on how to decide what to target. And so again, this is for every grade. It goes all the way down through high school. We spent substantial time here trying to decide what our next action steps would be, where perhaps we need to target PD. So not only did we look at action steps for the now, we also talked systemically and what we need to do for the future to prepare. And you'll see some of that work coming up. And so from that, we're able to write comprehensive summaries, like saying that while we made gains in comprehension, we still have gaps in academic vocabulary and informational text processing. Word knowledge, main idea, text structure are things we need to work on. So we are able to identify a district focus and decide what we're going to do about it. And like, for example, we need to spiral review context clues, reference tools, and figurative language. We think that would have a large impact across grade levels in our work as we prepare for SOL testing this spring. So 3 system-wide focal points for reading, and then we put in recommended action steps for those, and you'll see the results of this in a bit. I left this in here to show you we started in the fall with root cause analysis. Why were we seeing the trends that we were seeing? And we wrote action steps based on our deep dive of root cause that we did as a team. And we put some action steps in place. So for example, one of those things was a professional learning that we were able to do in January, and that was focused on academic vocabulary. So we have accomplished that, and I just wanted you guys to see that that was part of the process for our fall data breakdown. With vocabulary, we talked about comprehension. This was from our fall session, and we included this in our professional development in the spring, or in the winter. All right, that was just reading, y'all. Now, we're gonna talk about math. Same idea, we also have the iReady diagnostic for math. We see the same trends. Students who are on grade level, most of the time are passing the SOL. The ones that are not are missing 1 or 2 questions, that's it. Even students 1 grade level below are almost always successful on the SOL. There's a few students who are not, and so we're able to target and look and see what their scores were and why we think that may have happened. And then students 2+ grade levels below, a little less than our reading data, but some of them are also passing the SOL, and that gives us a lot of information on what we can strengthen within our systems to help those students who are below still be successful on SOL tests. So looking at iReady, this is fall to winter. This is a longitudinal analysis, so we're looking at the same students that tested in the fall and winter. I think you'll notice a pretty large growth overall for our students in math. This is not what our math data looked like from iReady at this time last year. So for K-5, the longitudinal analysis, we're looking at the grade level breakdown as compared to the overall on the previous slide. And then for 6 through 8, and I want to point out for 8th grade, this does not include honor students in Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. Next year, we will require Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 to participate until they test out of iReady, just so it doesn't skew the data. The same growth chart. Again, if I would have shown this to you last year, most of our schools would have been deep in that low left quadrant. Now several of our schools are above, and all of our schools are seeing high levels of growth. Like I said about the instructional time, we're seeing higher usage in math, and I think that speaks to our focus on math this year. Kindergarten is slightly lower because we're still teaching them how to use computers. So we start with reading and then we get into math. This is winter to winter, so this is cross-sectional, not necessarily the same groups of students. This is the grade level breakdown for that winter to winter cross-sectional analysis. And then this is the 6 through 8 breakdown of winter to winter. Again, one of the big differences is not having the honors level data in here. This is the breakdown by race, so you can see progress towards typical growth over there on the right and how many students make up each of those categories. This is the breakdown for English learners. And then special education, and I think you'll notice that special education is higher in math. And then this is the comparison of English learners to students that are identified as having special needs, and then students who are both dually identified. This is the math comparison of typical growth to stretch growth. Just to remind you, typical growth is what we expect year over year. Stretch growth is moving beyond that, and so think about our kids who either are accelerated or who we need to move from a couple grade levels below. And I think you'll notice that a lot of our students to be at the mid-year point are already halfway to stretch. That's really impressive. You've seen this chart. It's here again because now we're focused on math. This is for those interim assessments, so think those SOL-like assessments that we give 3 times a year. We also look at subgroup breakdowns for interim. These are the same types of report, but we do them by content, since a lot of our teachers in the division are content specialists, meaning they teach reading all day, they teach math all day. And then we do the SDBQs for every content. So that's the student data by question, where we can see how the schools performed on every standard on the test. We also do the vertical alignment for math. We do it for all the content. So we did this one by grade level trends because math, while it is very vertically aligned, we thought this was more impactful than the overarching reporting categories like we did for reading. So you can see trends by grade level group and how those are supported by the individual student work that we're seeing. So for example, fractions is a consistent area where we need work across the board. So we do that detailed trend summary where Marcus clicked and scrolled for about 6 pages by grade level of growth and decline, and then what that means for instruction. We go through that as a division and make decisions and put actions in place, and we're able to write an executive summary, for example, where we say we're going to focus on fractions and rational number sense, proportional reasoning, and algebraic and functional thinking. So here's our focal points and what we're going to do about them. And just to throw back to the fall when we did this work the first time this year, we looked at a possible root cause analysis for the trends we were seeing in the fall. We wrote some action steps and decided what we were going to do about them. And so this what helped us target the professional learning we would do in math this year. Moving to science and history, we're about halfway there, guys. So science, we'll start with interims. Science and history are not included in iReady, so we have to pull a lot from the assessments that we do have available, like the interim assessment. We look at subgroup performance for these areas as well to see if there's any specific places that we need to target. We also do the SDBQ reports for both science and history. Those are the in-depth SOL breakdowns for each test, so we can see what specific standards might need more support, or even if we need to work with coaches, for example, to help push in some of the things that we're seeing. In grade 5 science, we're seeing an upward trend. There was a large movement from interim 1 to interim 2, which we are very impressed by. We're consistently impressed with the growth in grade 5 science. Middle school did slightly decline from interim 1 to interim 2, but we think that was because there was increased rigor on interim 2 when we compared the 2 tests. And that also hints towards there's still some large conceptual gaps, but I'll remind you that that middle school science class assesses 3 years worth of standards. So if there is a gap, it takes a little bit more to overcome that. Biology performance is kind of in the same place as middle school. We're seeing some growth in life science strands, but regression in others. So we're able to target specific things based on those trends as well. And again, you'll see that work shortly. This kind of gets into the details of what we saw growth in. So for example, 5th grade in earth and space science, but physical and life science were a little weak. Middle school in data interpretation and classification, but physical science still proved challenging, as well as energy transfer, which are both challenging concepts. And then biology, students improved in macroevolution, so think like big things that you can see and relate to, but some of the cellular and molecular things still prove a little challenging. Specifically in science, we see trends that match reading and math, where anything that is multi-step or conceptual does prove more challenging. And so this is the executive summary for science. I know you guys will spend time reading these in detail, but we take these are the root of the things that help us decide what we're going to do and target in the action steps that you'll see at the end. Moving into history, again, history we have to look at specific courses because specific courses are tested. We do see modest improvement across political, economic, and geographic reasoning. But history, we own this, does remain our lowest performing area, and we have a lot of work to do in history. So you'll see some of the identified struggle areas for each content here. It generally goes back to map skills, understanding the connections between civilizations, where resources are, the connection to religion, and things of that nature. And we see those across each course. So part of our focus is on some of those foundational skills. Again, we'll get there. And so we're able to write an executive summary based off of that in-depth trend analysis. This goes back to our fall work. So where we left off when we met last week, we review, have we accomplished the things we wanted to originally? And if not, what are we going to do about that? So then, we've done all of the big overview. We also want to go look at school by school performance and decide who at the school level might need specific support. And we start again with SOLs. And so some of our guiding questions are demonstrating which schools are demonstrating significant improvement, how do patterns vary between grade levels and content areas, what strategies or programs have the most significant impact, how do screener and diagnostic trends align with interim data, what schools demonstrate visible student growth, and what can be scaled division-wide, which is probably one of our most important questions. So we break this down by school, we look at year over year to see where we may need additional support. So this is reading. Then we look at subgroups by school. And so again, this is all reading, and you'll see each school name at the bottom of the graph. This is EL students for each school. And please remember with EL students that there are varying populations at each school. This is students with disabilities at each school. And then this is history overall for each school. And then Black students, again for history. EL students, students with disabilities, and then math. This one's in alphabetical order by content. So then we do the subgroup breakdowns by school. So Black students, students that are English language learners, students with disabilities, and then last but not least, science. So again, by subgroup, Black students for each school, L students, and students with disabilities. From there, obviously, we spend a lot more time at that when we're at the district day, and just to add, we do this for a whole day, so they have a little more breaks than you guys do. I apologize. But some additional department data connections, we talk about the work at the division level. So for example, for the mid-year, we look at federal programs. One of our focus points is meaningful engagement, so students making up time for attendance. So you can see the breakdown for October, November, and December. So our students have recovered about a collective 3,585 instructional days based off of all of our meaningful engagement opportunities. This is obviously much higher because I haven't included January or February data in this chart. So some next steps, we continue to review this data. We update meaningful engagement monthly for the chart that you just saw. We're looking at before and after school tutoring specifically for meaningful engagement. We also look at our after school impact in general and some of the resources we have with the community like church-based tutorial. As a part of the federal programs team, they spend time reviewing remediation budgets, local and title funds. And then we monitor impact of our after-school tutoring. Who's attending? Is their performance increasing over the year? Who is providing remediation? And is there notable increases in student achievement? So we do go through teacher-specific data as we select teachers who participate in after-school tutoring, and then things like Saturday school. We also talk about MTSS updates. So what is the status of MTSS? Specifically for mid-year, we went through where we are, so how we started with MTSS, the number of math and reading intervention plans for the division and what went into that work. Did we communicate with parents and got all the signatures and all that documentation uploaded? So we go through that. And then we talk about now what. So we want to make sure we get plans updated as the year goes on because those are continuous. We reconcile outstanding to-dos, establish our progress monitoring and ensure we're checking in with our schools. We do have a new MTSS platform, Branching Minds, this year, so that's been a grow for everyone. And then we provide consistent support in those different areas. So for example, Branching Minds, and then each school has an MTSS coach, so we check in with those people as well and what supports their schools will need. Then we talk about discipline. So this first chart is a comparison of August to January. And so if you'll look with me at the January data by school, what you're looking at is a comparison from January to August. So for example, at Activate, they had less percent of their population get referrals in January than they did in August. And then a couple of schools had a slightly higher number of referrals from August to January. But you'll notice that it's the difference of 1 or 2 or maybe 3 students. So we do feel like our discipline is moving in the correct direction. The next slide in discipline is looking at ISS and OSS annual comparisons. So January ISS is the first grouping, and then January OSS is beside it. So in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension. And then that's compared to August in-school suspension and August out-of-school suspension. And then we've also identified areas where there's no change. We also have top 5 offenses by month. So in August, you're looking at things that caused out-of-school suspension at the elementary level, things that caused elementary in-school suspension, and then middle school OSS and ISS, and high school OSS and ISS. So those are the top 5 categories for each level. And I think you'll notice at the beginning of the year, it's things like fighting, which obviously we want to avoid and cut down on, and that those are not our highest categories later in the year. Completely switching gears, then we talk about some of our other programs like how our library is going and what the work of our media specialists. So specifically, our media specialists are supporting literacy instruction. One of the things we're working on doing is completing our library collections and ensuring that we're renewing and revitalizing those libraries, getting more current text, stronger curriculum alignment, and so on. We also want to make sure we're providing professional learning to our media specialists to help support the reading standards of learning. Again, the reading standards are new. And our ultimate goal always is to instill a love of reading and ensure that there's plentiful opportunities for independent reading. So here we have our collection inventory. I'm proud to share with you, I think you've probably seen this, but all of our collections have actively been updated as of last year, 2025. Several of them are brand new. Activate, Arnett, Galileo, GW, RISE have brand new libraries. A couple of those schools never had a library, and RISE now does, for example. We're really proud of that work. You can even see here the number of books per student, and this is something we want to keep growing in each of our buildings. So, last but not least, what do we do with all this? So the next few slides is the action planning that we did in the fall. We follow the same framework when we do this work. So we identify bright spots we want to replicate, priority areas for targeted support. We follow the 3A framework: adopt, adapt, abandon, and then we assign leads, timelines, and evidence measures. So in the fall, each content area and specialty group, so again, the full division team, they decided to identify one vocabulary strategy to implement systemically and consistently across lessons. And then we did a PD on that in January. With that, one comprehension strategy to implement systemically and consistently. In the mid-year, same framework. I really broke this down for y'all. This was like 25 slides, okay? So this is a summary. But for ELA, we revisited our one vocabulary strategy since we did the PD in January, and to ensure we're implementing that consistently. We also monitor that in our walkthroughs and PLCs. And then that same idea for comprehension strategies. For math, they're doing teacher spotlights. And then all content areas are going to implement a question of the day, which we've done in years past and we think has been successful. For science and history, science is going to focus on science and engineering practices, and then again with that question of the day. History will also do the question of the day, and they are going to do a data review with their teachers and coaches from this curriculum team, not just the data chat we do as the assessment state reporting team. Then, at the end of all of it, we come together and share out our action steps and what we gained from the day. I will say, and some of the people in the room can speak to this, that I think we're really starting to get the day-to-days right. I know a day-to-day that sounds miserable to some of you, and I think they've been good, but this last one was really good. And so I think we got a lot from it, and we'll continue doing that work to support the division. So we schedule follow-ups and progress checks. We'll do it again after SOLs. And then we close out, make sure we're clear on our next steps and how we're going to be accountable for the things that we've decided. And that, my friends, while it may not have felt quick to you, is a very fast version of what a division day-to-day looks like. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. You mentioned the SDBQ report that also lists teacher specific. Is that monitored year by year?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that data that you use so that they can get professional development and training?
Yes, ma'am. So to be clear, we have SDBQs year over year for multiple assessments, including SOLs. We do include teacher names on specific reports for leadership teams. With leadership permission, we share them with schools in specific settings for professional development purposes. We do not track at this time teacher data year over year in regard to pass rates or how they're performing on specific standards. That would be a growth from our department. Yes, ma'am. It's available, but it's not put together. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Wall.
And so that was an amazing presentation. In regards to, I know that your data, it projected a lot of highs, lows, you gave a lot of interventions, but for someone that's a parent that's sitting and listening to all of this, because it's a lot of information, and us reading a lot of numbers, but someone as a parent or a community member, if you had to give a brief overview, and Dr. Harrison, if you need, just as a forecasting of kind of like putting it all together, what would you say?
Well, we do, so what we try to do is target like the fall day-to-day. We realized our trend was comprehension, comprehension of vocabulary. So our PD in January was around comprehension of vocabulary and everything that we do. The iReady reports actually give parents the opportunity to have feedback. I would say that our students are doing well. We finished the ESOL access test today. The teachers felt good about the performance of the children. We're looking at not the questions, but the interim assessments. And you can see that the children, although the mark for passing is higher, that we have more children on grade level. And you have to grow before you get there. So if you look at those already bars that she shared, we have more and more children moving upward. And we have the principals here tonight to share how they use that data and how they engage their parents. So a lot of our principals are sending home information for parents at various levels. So we feel really good about this year's assessments. Now, the growth will change. Last year, the way that they measured growth was they compared the growth of our students to students similar to ours, and that's VBOS. This year, we'll go back to where students will have individual growth measures. So they'll look at my test scores to see how I performed last time, and then give us a growth point. What I think this data does for our principals, they'll tell us whether or not it does that. I love it, so I'm all in all day long, and I'm eating it up. But some people just glaze over, just this is not their thing. But what the data allows us to do, and I thank the whole team for this, is to target kids. Now you'll notice that we have Black students, L students, students with disabilities. We do track our white students and Asian students. The reason we have those three is because typically those are the groups that will land you in some challenges with the federal pass rate. So we have to always keep a target on those. Our white students are performing very well, our Asian students, and a lot of our Hispanic students. So we feel good about where we're going. We know the accreditation piece is continuing to look good. We will start to offer the accelerated math in 5th grade. We are a little concerned about fractions and all of that at the early stages, so we're looking at starting our fraction work at preschool. And that's really number sense and people understanding numbers. But I think the data gives us a roadmap that we didn't have before. We were just sort of guessing. But right now, we've got this down almost to a science as to where children are and the gaps that exist. And then the team, what they do is they devise a plan along with the principals, because the principals go through the same presentation for their schools, and the teachers do as well. We do not use this data to assess teachers and all of that. We use this data to decide how we can best support a teacher. So we tier our teachers, and then we look at how can we best push in and support those, like Stephanie Hainsworth with her work and those types of things. So we're feeling pretty, I don't know, maybe rose-colored glasses, I don't know, but I feel pretty good about it after sitting through the semester. I do.
Thank you so much, because I think sometimes, we see it and we have information, and I know that it's copied, but it's a lot of information. So thank you, Dr. Harrison, so much for that forecast. You did really well.
Dr. Williams.
Ms. McCarl, thank you again so much for this. I know this takes a lot of time. Take you a couple more snow days if you have to. Really quick question, just overview. I know conceptual thinking is like a big theme across math, reading, science, just big picture things. What strategies are we doing to help our students kind of close that gap and to think more critically and conceptually? Like brief overview.
Yes, so a lot of things actually. One of our targeted focus points we discussed with the team was simply practicing harder questions, right? So that's where the question of the day comes in, to ensure we're pushing in questions that meet that need, right? The SOL now has a trend of doing those technology-enhanced questions like paired passages. They've even introduced some field type questions that have a part A and a part B that only count as one question. So we have to make sure we're stopping and breaking down question types and ensuring our students know, what is this question asking and how do we find an answer, right? So it's much more skill-based in that area. We're also targeting conceptual understanding in our professional development, and so that was part of the focus in January. And then when we push into PLCs and walkthroughs, those are a part of our look-fors. Are you implementing the strategies that we've asked or that we've recommended by grade level? And then we also check in with our leaders and academic audits and so on. What are we seeing based on this look-for? How is this looking at your school-specific data chats that we do? So we're checking that quite literally at every level.
And I do want to also mention with the parents, not to interject, read, 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 read. Children are exposed to pretty lengthy passages on these state tests, and oftentimes they've not been engaged in reading long passages. So reading matters. Take the phone out of their hands, take the games and read. And also language. We need to stop telling our children to be quiet and have conversations with them, and language is so important. I think oftentimes we're telling children, be quiet, sit down, don't talk. But talking is really good. Having a conversation is good. So I think those are two things. And then asking them probing questions. So when you're in the grocery store, you're out somewhere, just ask them questions and make them think about answers. That's what parents really can help us with.
And if I may build on that, in the beginning, before I got Mr. Cheney to help me present this presentation today, I was going to click on DPS in 3D and go to our chronic absenteeism report. That's one thing we didn't talk about today. There's a whole lot of other data we work on as a division. But with that chronic absenteeism, we measure every 10 days. And let's just say I might be a little late on that report. Dr. Harrison is calling me on Monday morning and wondering where that report is. And I say all that to say, one of the best things that we can do is get our kids to school every day. And so we are paying attention to that. We have a lot of work going into attendance as well. But anytime I get an opportunity to talk to parents and they're like, what has a big impact? Showing up every day. For sure.
Absolutely. Mr. Payne?
Our kids at all grade levels can have the confidence that you have today and go through this presentation fluently like you did, we going to the next level. I applaud you for just going through this like you did. My question is to Dr. Ashton. To the science, middle school grades, I know we had a challenge with getting certified teachers to get us through the gap last year. How are we standing with that now? Because I knew that was the gap where we can go from being good to from better to good, or other ways. So you can explain that.
We're in really good shape. We actually have a science coach, I think at Bonner, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we're in good shape. The challenge with science in the middle school is you have so many topics that are taught over 3 years and tested in 1 year. And with mobility, you can have a student move in the 8th grade who's never even been exposed to our curriculum in 6 and 7 from out of state. So it's the challenge with the 8th grade science test is actually getting everyone caught up when there are gaps. And I think we're doing a pretty good job with that with our new coach. And also I'm really pleased with the elementary. All of the elementary teachers, I think one school is out of that loop, but for the most part, they plan together virtually. So can you imagine all the elementary science teachers playing virtually with the science coach, STEM coach, so that you see science, and I think that's a reason to see it improving.
And also, could you elaborate on the communication from elementary schools to the feeder schools with the science and all the levels, please?
So they work collaboratively and vertically, but I think we've got two principals here, and I don't want to steal their thunder. I think they're going to talk a little bit about how they work with their data and share, if that's okay. Then if they don't, I'll fill in. Okay.
Awesome job. Let's give her a round of applause. Next, we'll move to item 6.2, automotive program update. I'll turn it over to Dr. Barnes.
Excuse me. Good evening, school board. Good evening, Dr. Harrison. How are you doing? I'm here to give you an overview of the CTE Automotive Technology Pathway. It aligns with our strategic plan, whereas its objective is to increase college and career readiness for all the students. The first initiative is to increase work-based learning opportunities, and then the second initiative is to increase post-secondary readiness. Within the automotive pathway, a typical student would take, in the 9th grade, for instance, the first year would take computer science, and then in their 10th grade year, what they would choose was automotive technology. When they become a junior, they would choose automotive technology, and then in their final year, senior year, they would have the opportunity to take automotive technology 3, which in total right now in automotive, we have 29 students. As you see the pictures of, that's with the students who have our first apprenticeship. We had that last year with Bisbee Honda. And as you see, we had our 8th grade tours earlier this year, whereas the students were looking at the automotive section and they were getting tutored by some of the students themselves about what the program, what it represents. And for our next slide is the impact and opportunities, workforce development, career exposure, community partnerships. As far as with the automotive pathway, prepare students for high demand careers in automotive services, diagnostics, emerging electric vehicle technology. Students earn industry recognized credentials such as ASE, entry-level certifications, and OSHA safety training while developing technology employability skills. As far as for the career exposure and student empowerment, students explore automotive careers through hands-on guest speakers, dealerships, future participation in Skills USA competitions, early course introductions to safety, tool usage, and basic systems, while advancing courses focusing on diagnostics, electrical systems, hybrid technology. And as far as for community partnerships and innovation, we have strong partnerships with local dealerships, community colleges, internships, and our first ever, which was last year, our first paid internship, which was an apprenticeship program with Bisbee Honda, which provides real-world exposure and career clarity before their graduation. These collaborations and future expansions creates direct pipeline for our classroom students. So, really excited. And actually, we have a link, a small video I want to show you. Video.
Help, please.
Danville Public Schools Career and Technical Education Automotive Pathway prepares students for high-demand careers in the transportation and automotive industry through hands-on instruction, industry certifications, and real-world experience. Students progress through automotive technology courses where they learn vehicle maintenance, diagnostics, repair, and shop safety using industry-standard tools and equipment. Through a partnership with Bisbee Honda, students gain real-world experience by working alongside professional technicians and applying their skills in an active service environment. This opportunity helps students build confidence, industry connections, and career-ready skills.
What got me interested in auto mechanics was my grandparents who were aircraft mechanics. They talked about it when I was growing up, and it really got me interested in the field. I really like brakes and suspension work. We do a lot of general purpose work on cars here, like brake pads, resurfacing brake rotors, ordering new brake pads and installing them. Through this program, I've actually got an internship with Honda, and I should have a job lined up there after I graduate this year.
What got me interested in automotive was my boyfriend and I started hosting car meets called 434 Motors. That's when I really started to enjoy cars and notice more things about them other than like just the looks. So I really appreciate doing this program. I've learned a lot from it, and I have a really good teacher as well. You know, he's very hands-on, he gives good instruction, so you know, he makes it really easy to learn as well. I can rotate my own tires. I can also change my own brakes and brake pads as well. And I think my favorite thing was building, like taking apart and rebuilding the engine. And I just am very appreciative for everything I've learned in this class.
We started with the Danville Public Schools systems several years ago. You know, we saw some significant success with the partnership and decided to double and even triple down on our partnership with the school system in order to see how many students we could actually bring into the industry and beyond. We're excited about the ability to bring these particular students in because it does create a long-term pipeline for obviously Bisbee Honda, Danville, and in the fall, Bisbee's Precision Collision Center. So these students come in, they get real-time, real-life experience working side by side with master technicians that teach them the base critical skills they need in order to have a successful start. Essentially, we're teaching them how to be service technicians. because they've been mentored, because they spent this amount of time, the likelihood of them coming in and being a productive, long-term member of our businesses, it's priceless.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Any questions? Well, I'm glad they got you some help.
Yes.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next, we move to item 7.1, accounts payable warrants. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Gibbs.
Good evening, Chairman Graves, Vice Chair Cunningham, Superintendent Dr. Hairston, and members of the board. This evening you have before you accounts payable warrant number 153 in the amount of $1,194,659.85. Number 163 in the amount of $456,645.94. Number 167 in the amount of $3,500. And number 169 in the amount of $760,755.28. If anyone has any questions concerning these expenditures, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, thank you. Next, we'll move to item 8.1, update on teacher licensure. I'll turn it over to Ms. Lord.
Good evening, Chairman Graves, Vice Chair Cunningham, Dr. Harrison, and distinguished members of the board. I am no Olivia McCraw. However, I do appreciate the opportunity tonight to share with you something that's near and dear to my heart because it helps our most valuable resource, our teachers. And I'd like to talk to you tonight about teacher licensure. So like Olivia talked about with the conceptual learning, I'm going to throw a conceptual scenario at you tonight, and I'm going to ask you to take a road trip with me, if you will, and our final destination will be teacher licensure. Just like every Virginia driver is required to have a driver's license, they're required to do that book study, take that written test, and then take that practical test. Every teacher in a public school in the state of Virginia is also required to be licensed. There's a lot of book work, a lot of study work to do, there's some practical applications, and then they become licensed. And just when we get on that road and we see that there's different vehicles on the road, there's different makes and models, there are also different types of licenses in the state of Virginia. The postgraduate professional license is a license that's reserved or awarded to someone who goes beyond the basic requirements of teacher licensure, and they go on to get a master's degree in an educationally related field. So those who get master's degrees in special education, administration, or maybe even a master's degree in teaching secondary education, their licensure status is upgraded to a postgraduate professional license. And here in Danville, we have 216 teachers who have that postgraduate professional license. The next type of license is a pupil personnel services license. This license is reserved for those who are licensed in school counseling, school psychology, or school social work. And we have 14 pupil personnel services licenses in Danville Public Schools. The collegiate professional license is your required teaching license. That's reserved for people who have bachelor's degrees and completed all other licensure requirements, including testing and coursework. The technical professional pathway is fairly new. Here in Danville, we already have 5 folks who are licensed in technical professional capacity, like Mr. Walters in automotive education. He has a technical professional license. That pathway and that pipeline is getting larger and larger as Dr. Stone continues to build that CTE program. So we've got several teachers in the pipeline now who are working on their technical professional license, and I'm looking forward to seeing that grow. The International Educator License is the license that is reserved for those folks who do their education and their teacher prep work overseas. So our EPI teachers and our participant learning teachers are awarded International Educator licenses. Their work is done overseas, but then it's brought into the States and it's equated to Virginia specifications. Their licenses are typically 5-year licenses rather than 10-year licenses, and they coordinate with their work visas. A provisional license could be compared to like getting your learner's permit when you're getting ready to get on the road. It's an opportunity for you to get real-world practice because you're getting very, very close to getting your real license.
and we have 54 provisionally licensed teachers now in the district. And finally, this is our newest license. We have a local eligibility license. The local eligibility license is offered to us through the Department of Education. It gives Danville Public Schools the authority to issue a license to our teachers who we know are going to be finished with their licensure requirements at the end of the year. We started very small with this year. We picked a group of 7 teachers who we were confident are going to be finished in the next couple of months, and we offered them that local eligibility license. And this too is going to be growing over the next few years. So I want you to also think about maybe taking a road trip with me, the things that we need to pack, the things you've got to have when you take a road trip. You got to have fuel, you got to have insurance, and most importantly, you got to have some good snacks and a really good playlist for that road trip. So when it comes to licensure, you've got a similar concept. You've got some things that you've got to have, then you've got some other things that you've got some flexibility with, and that's what our general licensure requirements are equated to. With this, every teacher in the state of Virginia to get a license, with the exception of technical professional licenses, must have a bachelor's degree. The statutory training requirements that one must have is something that can be completed during the provisional licensure period. So while you've got that temporary learner's permit, you can work on these certifications. Things like cultural competency, your CPR certification, your child abuse and neglect certification, dyslexia, behavior support intervention, all of those can be completed while you are provisionally licensed. But you have to have them finished before you get your full license. The most confusing and complicated of these is the content coursework and the praxis assessment. I'm going to go into detail about those in the next slide. But then you've got professional studies coursework. The professional studies coursework are the classes that teach teachers how to be teachers. And then you've got supervised clinical experience. That's a requirement. If you go to college to be a teacher, you go through student teaching. But those of us who've changed careers like myself, we don't have that opportunity for student teaching. So you have 1 year of supervised clinical experience while you're a provisional teacher, and you're working with a mentor teacher. And at the end of that 1 year of experience, that counts as your supervised clinical experience. So I want to talk about, that content and why it's tricky. So whenever someone comes up to me and says, what do I have to have a license in the state of Virginia? I'm pretty clear on which praxis exam you have to have, what professional studies courses you have to have. You've got to have that bachelor's degree. But it's hard for me to answer the questions about content coursework because the content coursework relates directly to what grade level you're teaching and what content area you're teaching when you get to the secondary school. So I'll offer as an example, an elementary teacher is required to have 54 credit hours of instruction that spans across their reading, their math, their science, and their social studies. And I can stand there and I can talk to the teacher about you need 15 hours in English in these credits, you need 16 hours in history, and you need, I can blah, blah, blah them to death. But it doesn't mean anything to them until they actually see it on paper. Then we throw the praxis into the mix, and the praxis can be good and bad for a new teacher. It can be great because passing the praxis at the get-go eliminates some of the content coursework that you're required to have. So an elementary education teacher, when we review transcripts and they don't have 54 hours of content coursework, if they've got 42 hours of coursework and pass the praxis, that equates to the content coursework that they have to have. But an aspiring English teacher at the high school level only has to have 36 hours of content coursework in literacy and language instruction. Or if they pass the praxis, that 36 hours disappears. So that's what makes it confusing when someone asks you what it is they have to do to get licensed is you really have to see their transcripts and you have to know exactly which field that they're planning on teaching in to be able to give them a more concrete answer. When it comes to the professional studies classes, these are the things that you can complete during your provisional period. Human development and learning, curriculum and instruction, classroom and behavior management, assessment, foundations of education, and language and literacy. These are consistent across the board regardless of what grade level or subject content that you want to teach. Unfortunately for most people, if you don't go to school to become a teacher, you don't get these classes as an undergraduate. And so when I made my transition, we won't talk about how many years ago, into teaching, these were the classes that I had to catch up with. I had all the content knowledge, but I didn't have any of the professional studies classes because I didn't want to be a teacher when I was a little younger. So I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about some different routes to licensure. Not everyone follows the same path when it comes to licensure. Some of us take a straight path. Some of us take a very winding route. Some of us have several stops. Some of us stop to check out the scenery. Some of us take the wrong road. We have to do the GPS relocation. So thankfully, the state of Virginia recognizes that we need to have different routes to licensure. The most straight and narrow path to licensure is to go to college to become a teacher. We have several colleges and universities in the state of Virginia who looked at the Virginia Department of Education requirements for licensure and developed a program that would fit that licensure route. So schools like Longwood, Averett, JMU, and Radford University know that we need that teacher pipeline, and they build their programs to match Virginia Department of Education requirements. And they petition the Virginia Department of Education and say, we want to be an educator prep program for the Commonwealth. And then Virginia looks at their course offerings and says, yes, you have an approved educator prep program. So someone who goes into one of those universities and takes that program comes out assured that they're going to have the correct license. The next route that we can take for teacher licensure is teacher residency programs. Teacher residency programs, we work with schools like Averett and Liberty University, where we hire some teachers to work in conjunction with them as they're coming into their student teaching era. We already hire them from the get-go, and so when they finish their student teaching, they've already got a semester of experience. That's another route. The third route that I want to talk about tonight is the provisional licensure route. The provisional licensure route carries a misconception with it from talking with teachers. And I say that just from my conversations with teachers. They feel like as soon as they're hired to be a teacher, that they're automatically provisionally licensed and that they have 3 years to get their license. And that's caused a little bit of a backlog in getting some of our folks moved from initial status into the provisional status. They don't understand that just because they've been hired that they're automatically provisionally licensed. So what I have to do at this point is I'm pushing them to work towards those provisional licensure requirements, get those content courses taken care of, or get that praxis assessment taken care of so that we can get you a provisional license. Once a provisional license is issued, then you do have 3 years to finish all of the course requirements to become a fully licensed teacher. Again, your statutory requirements can be taken during that provisional licensure period, and the determining factor about whether or not you get a provisional license is your content coursework. Here in Danville, we have 61 provisionally licensed teachers. 41 have licenses that expire June 30th of 2026. We have met one-on-one with every single one of these teachers and made sure that they're on track to finish their provisional licensure requirements by the end of the year. Those snow days weren't helpful for very many people, but they were for me. I had lots of virtual meetings during those snow days. We have 12 teachers whose license expires in 2027, 8 who expire in 2028, and we have 10 who have applications currently sitting in the Department of Education that we anticipate will become provisionally licensed before the end of the school year. Another alternative pathway to licensure is the Career Switcher program. And most people think that when you say career switcher, that just means that somebody woke up one day and decided they didn't want to be a mortgage loan processor anymore. They now want to be a teacher, so they're a career switcher. But technically, the Virginia Department of Education classifies a career switcher as somebody who is enrolled in an educator prep program on a part-time basis, working with that college or university and working full-time as a teacher in the state. We have one official career switcher at Danville Public Schools right now. Our next most common alternative route to licensure is iTeach. And iTeach is a self-paced, module-based online program that meets all Virginia requirements for licensure. This is a wonderful program for people working full-time because when it says self-paced, it means self-paced. If you want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep and work on your iTeach stuff, by all means, get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. If you can't devote any more time than Saturday nights to iTeach, then that's when you do your iTeach coursework. And the progression of the classes online is one module follows the next. So as you finish one module, the next module opens for you to complete. You get immediate teacher feedback. Most of the teachers who work for iTeach are able to give feedback or grades within a 24 to 48 hour period so that our candidates aren't stuck waiting on teachers to grade their assignments that are online. This program is 100% approved and endorsed by the Virginia Department of Education. Anyone that completes the iTeach pathway and gets that completion certificate from iTeach gets a license to teach in the state of Virginia. No questions asked. As far as some specifics about iTeach are concerned, is they right now have 29 approved endorsement programs. That's not every single endorsement that we need here in Danville. A school counselor can't get their license through iTeach, but 29 covers the vast majority of what we need here in Danville. It covers elementary education, special education, and most secondary teachers' licenses like English or mathematics or even business education. The candidate to enroll in iTeach must have a bachelor's degree with a 2.5 GPA as an undergraduate. They must submit official transcripts to iTeach. They're required to watch a quick video and then sign the iTeach agreement. We went one step further here in Danville Public Schools, and we now have our candidates for iTeach. We revamped our agreement, and they now sign a stay agreement and a repayment plan. Danville Public Schools pays the entire tuition for iTeach. That's $3,050 per candidate. We ask that in exchange for that $3,050, that they work to complete the program within 12 to 18 months, and that they stay for 3 years once they're licensed. Candidates who leave before the 3-year period are asked or required, according to the agreement, to repay a portion of that tuition based upon how long they stay. They stay 1 year, they pay back 67%. They stay 2 years, they pay back 33%. They stay 3 years, there's no repayment required for the iTeach program. Specifically, a candidate who is enrolled in iTeach starts out with 3 to 4 modules depending upon their endorsement area, and then they're asked to take the praxis. If they take and pass the praxis exam and complete those 3 to 4 modules, they are automatically eligible for the provisional license. Virginia gives them a 1-year provisional license if they're in the iTeach coursework, because they feel like 1 year is a sufficient amount of time to finish that coursework, but they do offer extensions if an extension is necessary. If the praxis is not passed at that particular point in time, the candidate is more than welcome to continue in the coursework, and sometimes the coursework is what gives them the extra little oomph that they need to get past that praxis exam. For our DPS iTeach numbers, since the program's inception here in Danville Public Schools, we've had 91 candidates enrolled here in Danville Public Schools. 31 of those candidates did exit the program. Some of that was learning curves. I got into the program, I didn't really realize that I had 11 modules to do. I would rather go ahead and pay for my own education and take the 3 classes that I need to take rather than do that, and they stepped out of the program. There were a few candidates who left Danville Public Schools before they finished the iTeach program. Thankfully, iTeach worked with us that first year, and they gave us credit memos for those folks who left and allowed us to apply those tuition funds to new candidates who entered that. So we didn't lose a lot of money in that process. Currently, we have 60 teachers enrolled in the iTeach program. 7 have finished all of their coursework in iTeach, and they just need to pass the praxis to be fully licensed. 24 candidates have received their provisional license because of their participation in iTeach. And 12 candidates so far have completed the program and have become fully licensed, thanks to the work with iTeach, which is really, really nice. The last type of license that I wanted to talk about very quickly was that local eligibility license. We started really small with that this year. We only offered that to 7 people that we were very confident would be finished this year. Virginia offers us the authority to issue, as Danville Public Schools, we can issue that license. Dr. Hairston signs off on it, and Mr. Graves signed off on those applications. We sent those to the Department of Education. They said, sure, we trust your judgment. Those 7 people are licensed. A local eligibility license is only good for 1 year, and it is only good for Danville Public Schools. So if that teacher were to leave, that license stays with us. It doesn't go with them. You cannot license school counselors through local eligibility, and you cannot license special education teachers through that route. And there's a cap on how many of our teachers we can license. We can only license 5% of our previous year's total. To simplify that, if we had 100 teachers in Danville this year, we could only license 5 of them next year in that local eligibility license pathway. So just like when we take the wrong turn and GPS recalculates us, occasionally we take a wrong turn when it comes to licensure and somebody kind of messes up and we recalculate. So for that point, and we'll get to Averett here in just a minute, every teacher who comes into Danville Public Schools as a new school teacher gets a personalized GPS from me. They get a checklist that lists specifically what courses that they need, what tests that they need, what the process is, the application, the transcripts that they have to submit to me, the reports on experience. It's all itemized, one step at a time. It's sequential, so the first thing they do is the most important thing for them to do, whereas the second thing that they do is the second most important thing for them to do. Then once I submit their application packet to the Department of Education and they give me a ruling or a check letter telling me what else that person needs, I call that teacher back in, we sit down and we meet and we look at the Virginia Department of Education's letter. We go over the requirements and we make sure that they understand what the expectation is and that they have a plan moving forward. For a lot of people at that point, hey, let's look at iTeach for you. Or it may be that they only need 2 classes and that they can go to Danville Community College and get that class, or they can get that class online. But we make sure that that pathway is clear at that point. It's like a checkpoint, if you will. Unfortunately, with every travel we take, there are roadblocks, there are detours, and there are barriers to license. Some of the more common barriers or detours that we've had here in Danville Public School is that the Virginia Department of Education does not publish a list of acceptable courses. So you can't go to DOE and say, okay, I'm going to go to Longwood. Does EDUC 235 count? That's not out there. That's not a thing that's for public consumption. So they publish the list of coursework that you have to have and a description of what that course must entail. Fortunately, I've got some experience there and I can pretty much look at the course descriptions and tell you, but if there's any doubt in my mind about whether that course will count or not, I can contact the Department of Education and get that verified before they take the coursework. Unfortunately, Liberty University has been a source of aggravation for several of our teachers because they offer a licensure route and a non-licensure route because they know that a lot of their teachers are going to go to private schools to teach and they don't have to have the licensure courses. And so occasionally we have teachers who take courses at Liberty and those courses don't count for the Department of Education. So that's a roadblock and an obstacle that we sometimes come across. But we bridge some gaps here in Danville Public Schools. When you hit that roadblock, we're here for you. We've got roadside assistance, we've got bridges, we've got AAA towing, we've got Janice Largent on the run. We've got a few different things that we can help you out with. And so one of them that I'm very, very proud of, this was new when I came to Danville. Danville Public Schools entered into an agreement with Averett University a few years back and offered the master's degree in special education cohort. And Danville Public Schools paid for our teachers to get their master's degree in special education with Averett because the need was so strong. Originally, when the program started, there were 19 contracts that were signed, 19 teachers who were interested in getting their master's degree. At the end of the day, there was one teacher who said she was interested but then chose not to enroll. She chose to go a different route. We had 5 candidates to enroll, but then they resigned from Danville Public Schools. So that left us with 13 active participants. Of those 13 participants, 3 have completely earned their master's degree and are fully licensed with special education. 1 has earned her degree, and she's just waiting on the paperwork from DOE at this point. Very proud of her. 8 have finished the coursework, but are stuck on the praxis exam. And so we're offering them some help with the praxis exam to get them past that last hurdle so that they can become licensed. And we had 1 teacher who entered the program just a little bit later than everybody else. She has 1 semester left before she's finished with her work. The Averett program gave us a lot of different obstacles because the program itself is better aligned for somebody who has some educational experience in teaching children how to read. So for those special education teachers who are teaching at the secondary level right now, they weren't actually taught how to teach children how to read. And that's what the praxis that they have to take centers around, and that's what they're struggling with. So we've had some conversations about what we can do to support them. Another Averett University thing that we would want to look at going forward, if we were ever to do this again, the program at Averett offers the endorsement in special education general curriculum, but we have some teachers in that program who are actually teaching adaptive classrooms. So we're going to have to work with them when they finish their license to get them additional support and additional classwork to make them endorsed for adaptive classrooms. Another thing that we do to bridge the gap here in Danville is we offer a lot of assessment assistance to our teachers. The I Teach enrollment itself includes passage preparation vouchers. Passage Preparation is an outside company who works with ETS, and it's an online practice test. It's a module-based program that they can electronically take that will help them prepare for the praxis exam. In addition to what I Teach offers, the division has purchased our own passage prep vouchers that we can give to teachers. So far this year, we've offered that to 25 of our teachers who've been struggling with their praxis exam. Next year, in Human Resources, part of our budget allocations that we're going to request is a little bit of money to purchase some supplementary materials, because some people just learn better when they've got that book in their hand. So we would like to purchase some study guides, some study manuals, and we'd like to explore some options for tutoring for those folks. The Bridge Assessment is new this year. This is a really neat program. The Virginia Department of Education partnered with ETS, the Educational Testing Services, the people who make the praxis exams. So if someone in Virginia doesn't pass one of their praxis exams and they score within a certain range of the passing score, they are offered an opportunity to participate in a remediation program for $50 rather than pay the $180 to retake the praxis exam. And we've already had about 7 teachers who've been successful with the praxis by using the Bridge Assessment. Right now, the Bridge Assessment's not available for all praxis exams, but fortunately for us, it is available for the teaching reading praxis, the elementary education praxis. So those are our two big hits, and so that Bridge Assessment has been really beneficial for us. And then grant funding. We received word 2 weeks ago that Danville Public Schools has received a mathematics acceleration grant that will help 11 teachers offset the cost of their praxis exam. That grant was for $1,430. And then I received word just this week that the licensure assessment assistance grant that I applied for in December is likely going to be approved because they asked me to modify my amount to $19,0110. So I'll be modifying that request at the end of this week. And then, of course, we have grant-funded programs that help build our pipeline of teachers. We do have the Grow Your Own programs, who I'm sure you've heard from Dr. Hainsworth about those programs and how we invest in our current workforce. And all of those programs align to licensure requirements. We have Title II Teacher Effectiveness Support Grant, which we applied for last week, and we're hoping to hear back from that very soon. Last year, we received an Early Childhood Provisionally Licensed Teacher Incentive Program, which it actually helps people, help our teachers offset the cost of coursework associated with getting their license. And we've applied for that again this year. And again, all of these programs directly align with our licensure route. So let's stop and take just a really quick scenic detour and look at where we are in Danville Public Schools right now. We have 540 fully licensed teachers in the district. 61 are provisionally licensed teachers. We do have 24 teachers who are fully licensed, but they stepped up to the plate for us this year and volunteered to teach something that was slightly outside of their endorsement area. Those teachers are working on the licensure requirements to add those endorsements to their license. We have 91 teachers who we are awaiting applicant action from them. They haven't quite gotten me everything that I need, or they still have some coursework to take, or they are still working in I Teach but haven't gotten to the provisionally licensed section yet. And we have 26 applications sitting at the Department of Education right now, waiting for them to be reviewed, and optimistic that a lot of those are going to come back with licensure status. So, at the end of the day, the road may include highways, scenic routes, on-ramps, recalculations, and bridges, but our destination remains the same, destination licensure. And together, DPS, we are committed to helping every educator arrive. Questions?
Any questions? Any
Yes, sir.
questions?
Thank you for that. I know, having firsthand knowledge, that is a lot of information and a lot of people to track.
Yes.
My question to you, of the 61 provisionally licensed teachers, how many have exceeded that threshold of 3 years, or exceeded the 3 years and are approaching maybe 6 or more years, still working on a provisionals?
Okay, I don't have that number obviously at the top of my head, and that's something that I can get for you fairly quickly. I know that last year we applied for, if I'm remembering correctly, so give me a vicinity here, a little leeway, we applied for 12 of those teachers to have a 1-year extension added to their license. I was working with one teacher this year. His case was very, very unusual in that he came in COVID year and got his provisional license during the COVID year, so he was given a COVID extension. And then the following year, he was given the House Bill, a House Bill 2-year extension. Then he finished his provisional licensure period, and he was granted an extension, so we're hoping that he gets finished this semester. But I'd be happy to get you the numbers.
And will you say that most of those teachers who have not been fully licensed because of the praxis?
Yes, yes, quite a large number.
Any others? Any others? Just 2 quick questions. One, just from my knowledge, how many times can you take the practice?
You can take the practice as many times as you want to, but they require 30 days in between attempts. And unfortunately, you have to pay for it every time that you take it.
Awesome. And I appreciate, the slide talking about the assistance, because that was one of my questions, and I checked it off.
Good.
That's awesome to know that we're providing that assistance to our educators. And then the second one, slide 7, 41, what is it? Back on, yeah. So the 41, what are we doing to address that? Because June is coming pretty quick.
Yes, it is. Those are the first people that I talked to during those, I talked to them in November. We went out to schools and talked to them one-on-one and made sure that they were clear that, come June, we're in trouble and we need to make a plan. So we developed a plan with those teachers. We went back out, and when I say we, I mean Ms. Wimberly and I, and Ms. Hilton in some cases went with us. We also talked to some of them in January about the possibilities and what they needed to have done by a date, offering assistance. If it was praxis prep, if we could offer a passage prep, we would do that. If it was needing help to find a course that they still needed, we would do that. For some people, it was just they'd gotten stuck in iTeach and didn't know how to get past the next hurdle. And so I was able to go in and say, okay, this is what your dashboard looks like. This is what they need at this point in order for you to go forward. So we have met with them personally twice, and for some people 3 times this year.
Awesome. And just lastly, Dr. Harrison, if we could, I guess, closer to June, if we could just get an updated number on what we've done and where we are. Thank you.
Happy.
Where do we stand with the partnerships with the ones that need to take the practice test? I thought we had something in place like that.
That AVRIT cohort,
I thought we had something in place with DPS where they could partner with someone to help study, to prepare them for the test.
I'm unfamiliar with that. Now, I have offered study buddies, if you will. Like I have said, this teacher who is also in your building is also studying to take the praxis exam, and tried to connect the 2 of them. But Dr. Harrison, I'm afraid I don't know what's happening there.
A lot of this.
Passage prep.
And that's really that is a very good platform. It's a test prep platform. And then oftentimes you can go to the Praxis website and you can just print the guides out and study just like you would an exam. But what Ms. Largent is saying, sometimes that book in hand is helpful, so we'll purchase those things. But there's lots of things that we do in Danville to help with the Praxis with people, they must engage.
So my question is, do we have something in place so that we will?
contract year expire.
Yeah, that's been a conversation too, to be honest.
No further questions.
Yeah, that definitely has, that's been a conversation. That kind of wink, wink, the contracts are due in April, wink, wink.
Mr. Chair.
Also,
Yes, ma'am.
So I know this information, that you was given, is that teachers only with the information that you have given? Is it teachers only in the district, like with principals or anything involved?
I'm sorry, it did include principals, assistant principals, and it included central office staff who hold teaching licenses, those numbers.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
any others? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Guess with that being said, are you at liberty to say, maybe do you know the amount of maybe principals that would be in that number?
I do know that number. I'm not sure that it's an appropriate in a public forum, but I will be happy to provide that for you.
Awesome. Thank you again for that report.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move to item 9.1, Student Achievement and Accountability Committee update. I'll turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Chair Graves. Good evening, fellow board members. On Tuesday, February 17th, we had our initial student achievement and accountability meeting. Present was myself, Dr. Harrison, Dr. Babaloa. We welcomed 2 new members this year, Ms. Walker and Ms. McLaughlin. And this meeting just kind of served as an overview, set the guidelines and expectations for the committee, kind of went over some milestones and some events and some strategic actions that we want to cover. From January 7th through March 12th of this semester. Just some dates just to keep in mind. We've got progress reports coming out on the 20th. On the 23rd, there will be a reading and writing SOL simulation for grades 5 and 8. Work keys writing assessment for GW will be the 2nd. The reading assessment for that will be the 9th. On the 19th, of course, report cards will go out. We've got several other events going that's happening in February and March. We've got our Reading Day, Bowl, History Day competition. As we know, we had winter graduation last night. A couple other math competitions, spelling bees. And then we've got the GoTech mobile lab that'll be traveling throughout our schools from February 24th through the 12th of March. Also celebrating the Virginia 250th anniversary. We've got the lab coming to our schools, or excuse me, GW for the 25th and 26th. And again, just covered some Q3 initiatives that we're looking at, of course, looking at numeracy, literacy, and then just like our academic competitions and stuff, and things to just wrap up the year. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Williams. Next, we'll move to 9.2, Finance Committee report. Remember on that report on February the 9th, 2026, myself, Ms. McLaughlin, Dr. Harrison, and Ms. Gillis we had our finance meeting. Ms. Gillis prepared a presentation highlight our current adopted budget for the 25-26 school year is just over $121 million. Like most school divisions, our budget is largely people-focused with about 78% dedicated to salaries and benefits. This highlights that our greatest investment is in our employees, the teachers, staff, and support personnel who directly serve our students every day. This year, we did experience a reduction of approximately $760,000 in federal funding, largely due to changes in federal poverty data and eligibility accounts. While we continue working to manage this impact, reduction of this size can create pressure on staffing, programs, and services if not offset through other funding sources. As we look ahead to the 26-27 budget, our priorities remain focused on what matters most for student success and staff support. These include strengthening literacy efforts, particularly for our exceptional children, supporting employee compensation and wellness, and expanding our MTSS multi-tiered systems of support, improving communication, and continuing to enhance technology to support safety and security across our school division. At the state level, the General Assembly is currently reviewing the governor's proposed budget, which includes potential bonuses and salary increases for funded positions. The finance team will continue to monitor these developments closely as final decisions later this spring will directly impact our local budget planning. Another important factor is the LCI, the Local Composite Index, which determines the funding split between the state and localities. Dan was Index is projected to increase slightly. While this reflects changes in economic indicators, even small increases can reduce state funding and require greater reliance on local resources to maintain our current level of services. And finally, our partnership with the City of Danville remains critical, very critical. The city manages the school division's cash flow, ensuring payroll and operational expenses are met even when state or federal reimbursements are delayed. This coordination helps keeps our day-to-day operation running smoothly. In the coming months, we will continue refining projections, reviewing state budget updates, and engaging in public hearing process before bringing forward a final budget for approval. And in closing, there are financial pressures ahead. Our focus remains steady, making thoughtful, responsible decisions that support our students, our staff, and community while maintaining long-term financial stability. The notes in reference to this meeting will be shared with all board members as well as the agenda. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 26th at 4 p.m. here in the meeting room. And if you have any questions, you talk to Ms. Gillis. Any questions? Any questions? Next, we'll move to item 10.1, public notice for March 2026. Thursday, March 5th, 2026, 4 p.m., we have a policy committee meeting here in the school board meeting room. On Thursday, March 5th, 2026 at 5:30 p.m., regular meeting followed by a work session here in the school board meeting room. Thursday, March 12th, 2026, 4 p.m., operations, facilities, and planning committee meeting here in the school board meeting room. Thursday, March 19th, 2026, 4 p.m., student achievement committee meeting. Thursday, March 19th, 2026, 5:30 p.m., regular meeting here in the school board meeting room. And Thursday, March 26th, 2026 at 4 p.m., we'll have another finance committee meeting. And next we'll move to item 12.1, personnel recommendations, and at this time I'll turn it over to Ms. Hatcher.
Good evening, Chair Graves, Vice Chair Cunningham, members of the board, and Dr. Hairston, Superintendent Dr. Hairston. I come before you this evening requesting approval for the personnel report that you have before you.
Any questions? Any questions? This is an action item.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the personnel recommendations as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Williams, second by Ms. McLaughlin. Any discussion on personnel? Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call for the vote.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Cunningham,
Yes.
Mr. Payne,
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Ms. Avery,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes,
Mr. Gray.
Yes. Thank you.
thank you.
Next, we'll move to item 13.1, finance report. I'll turn it over to Ms. Gillis.
Good evening once again. You have before you the revenue and expenditure statement for the month ending January 31st, 2026, which includes our general fund operating budget as well as our textbook budget and our school nutrition budget. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions? Any questions? This is an action item.
Chair Graves, I make a motion that we approve the finance report as presented.
I second the motion.
Motion made by Ms. Cunningham, second by Dr. Williams to approve the financial report. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call for the vote.
Mr. Payne,
Yes.
Ms. Avery,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Ms. Cunningham,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes,
Mr. Gray.
Yes, thank you. Next, we'll move to item 14.1, board request for information for future agenda items. We have it. Next, we'll move to item 15.1, comments. Superintendent. City Attorney,
I don't have any comments.
please call roll.
Dr. Williams,
I'm gonna keep it short. It's been a long night for us, but first I want to offer another congratulations to our graduates yesterday. I know that you all will go out and do great things and contribute to our community, to our city, and whatever path you decide after you graduate. Our congratulations again to our students with their Vice President and President's Awards with DCC. Continue the great work. It's just a great season of teaching and learning here at DPS. Ms. McCarl, thank you again for that incredible report. We're definitely laying out the groundwork, so I'm excited to see what we do this semester. And as we just continue with the boil water advisory, just continue to lean on your neighbors, check in on neighbors, follow protocol. Outside of that, as the month of February comes to a close, happy Black History Month to our staff and students. Happy Lenten season to those who celebrate. Blessed Ramadan, and see y'all next week.
All right, I'm definitely gonna keep it short and sweet too. I'll just say a big, huge thank you to Miss Marquita Bass Jones for this being School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. Your dedication to the school board, to Dr. Harrison, your commitment, and I'll even just speak to your spirit as in its entirety. I've never seen you upset. I've never seen you get upset, angry. Everything is yes, I will do it. You do it with a smile, you do it with an eagerness, and you do it with such joy. So I definitely want to give you a wholeheartedly thank you on behalf of the school board.
Ms. Bass Jones, I don't know where to start with you. To the early emails, to the late emails. I think Dr. Harrison has really rubbed off on you with the emails, things. But thank you for just all of your hard work and dedication. It's not easy working with all of us at times. But just thank you. This board, as we look at the students that's at BCC, that was big for me, and then for the young men to actually stand and read the poem. Mr. Keon Jones done an excellent job and going in the right direction. School Board Appreciation Month, I wasn't here all last week, but I did receive my gifts this week, and I appreciate everything. And happy Black History Month. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm just gonna echo, Marquita, you have been Ms. Bass Jones, you have been a tremendous help with my many questions, not being able to find certain things, so I do appreciate your dedication, and like Ms. Cunningham said, your spirit alone, you make it easy to come to you when I have some questions that I probably should know the answer to, but my brain just don't function right. I will say that today, the vice president's list, president's list, a lot of those kids have other activities outside of academics and then being duly enrolled. And so I'm going to give out my favorite sport is cheerleading. We had 3 young ladies on the varsity team who received the vice president's, who were put on the vice president's list. And then this evening, we just found out that Bonner girls, at the halftime, it was 2022 tied with Halifax. They won 43-29. Those girls have worked hard. I know that here lately, all the statistic things and people numbers, but it was mentioned that they haven't been at this level for 15 years. And so that is amazing. They really worked hard since last year. And the last person that I'm going to give thanks to, and I think sometimes get it hard, is Lainey. Lainey has endured some Facebook comments, but I will say she's handled it professionally. And even though she's not the one making the call, she is the one delivering the message, and she's doing phenomenal. Don't pull your hair out, we have your back.
Yes, I'm gonna keep it short as well. Just do want to reiterate to you, Ms. Bass Jones, thank you for mothering us. We can text, email, call you anytime, and you are very responsive. There's nothing that you don't do when you call us your board, and you know you're going to take care of your board. And so I appreciate that. We appreciate that, and we love you for that. So again, happy Clerk Appreciation Week to you. Lastly, just to keep it very short and simple, we've celebrated a lot. We've learned a lot about our district. So I'm just going to end with continue to trust the process. We are moving in the right direction.
Just thank you, Ms. Jones, for all you do. You really do help us a lot. Me and the other student reps kind of come to the school board meetings know what we have to do and when. And then also, it's really great to see how what the achievements that me and the others, like all the other students are making, is recognized, like with the essay writing competition and the president's list, and just that our hard work is appreciated. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Galileo's Beta Club. Last week we competed at our state convention that we go to every year, and we were competing in different academic events and art events against students from all over Virginia. And out of the 32 of us that went there, we came back with 31 top 3 awards. I think we just represented Galileo and DPS really.
As we conclude tonight's meeting, just would like to share a few words of appreciation, short and celebration. Of course, first, thank you to our dedicated school clerk, Marquita. You have continued to be professional, your organizational skills, and your commitment to keeping the work of this board running smoothly. I was very incredibly proud of the Black History essay contest winners across all our grade levels. Your voices, creativity, and understanding of history truly reflects the excellence within our students. Congratulations again to our graduates who were honored during the 2025-2026 winter graduation on Wednesday. Your perseverance and determination are inspiring, and as we celebrate this important milestone with you and your family. And again, thank you, Mrs. McGraw, for your informative mid-year data report, Ms. Largen, for your presentation, The insight provides us and it helps us guide decisions and strengthens our focus on student success. And my last but not least is congratulations to Dr. Hairston. Today, it's been quiet, but she was recognized as through the Future of the Piedmont with the Catalyst Award. This honor reflects the impactful leadership and the continued dedication to advancing our opportunities for our students and our community. Thank you so much.
See, I tried to recognize Dr. Harrison, and she told me to be quiet. So thank you, Ms. Walker. So just real briefly, Ms. McCraw, thank you for that presentation. I don't know if, the numbers got me or my eyes just got a little heavy. I don't know what it was, but I do appreciate you for that. Ms. Bass Jones, again, I think they covered everything that we could possibly say, but we talk just about every day, and you make my job a lot easier, knowing that, the things that I go through daily with job, work, school, all other things, you make life a lot easier for all of us. So we do appreciate you, and you deserve this and more. So again, let's give her another round of applause. And I just, very excited about all the recognitions this evening. Anytime that we can recognize a student, we definitely want to do that. We started a couple of years ago bringing more students. I was sitting up here on the school board and, we never saw students. And I'm like, that's who we're here for. That's who we serve. We serve students. We're in the business of educating students. We deal with adults, so again, Ms. Larson, thank you for that presentation. But we're here to serve students, and that's who we love. So I just want to give a couple shout outs. Again, Mr. Keon Jones did an amazing job reading his essay. Very impactful. And also to our district champions, Bonner Middle School. That girls team is phenomenal. Yesterday they blew out Laurel Park 37-7, and then tonight in a tough battle they won and they handled the job. And also to the George Washington High School Eagles, yesterday evening our JV team won 70-24 against Gretna, and then our varsity handled business 66-48. And they're also deemed Piedmont District champions as well. So congratulations. And lastly, I believe they said yesterday, delayed but not denied at that graduation, 17 adult education graduates. That's an amazing job. So let's give them another round. And I think that's about it. Any further business? I think we had enough tonight, so meeting adjourned, and we do have a work session following this. Thank you.